Hi, I'm Zach, and this is a special Lenten edition of Did You Know? So during this season of Lent, Ava talked to you about things that you give up so that you might draw closer to God. And to draw closer to God, you take things on. You've given things up, you've freed up some time, and there are things that you can take on to intentionally grow close to God. And so that God's love and light begin to fill up in us so that we become a bright, shining light in God's world. So I have a few recommendations for you this Lent, things that you might take on. Let's see, I have all kinds of books on this table here, but how about we start with the prayer book? That's a really good place to start because that's what we use in our worship, the Book of Common Prayer. And specifically, I want to let you know about page 137. There is a morning prayer for individuals and families, and you might think about saying these prayers each day. You can say them by yourself, you can say it with a brother or sister, mom or dad. So what else? That's one way to pray. And of course, it's a good idea to spend time in the Bible. I have one book that I love by the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu. It's his Children of God Storybook Bible. And Archbishop Tutu has this amazing job, does this amazing job of telling the stories so beautifully. And then the illustrations, I think, are really cool. Here's Jesus teaching people how to be happy. And you can see the beautiful illustrations and the great story that Bishop Tutu brings to life. And speaking of Bishop Tutu, he's a saint. And it's always good to learn about the saints. They're like superheroes, showing us what it looks like when we are filled up with light and God's love and making a difference in the world. So this is a great book where you can learn about saints during this Lent. And aren't those cool illustrations, the way they made different people look? Like there's Martin Luther King Jr. And I'll just flip open to a page. Let's see where we get. Here we go. There's Augustine of Hippo. I wonder if you know anything about him. He lived in North Africa, about 1,600 years ago. And he showed us what it looks like to walk in the way of Jesus' love. You might learn about Augustine this Lent, and he can help you draw more closely to God. All right, what next? Here's another prayer resource, Common Prayer for Children and Families, kind of like what we looked at in the prayer book, but just broken out for each day. So there's Monday evening, and prayers that you can say, 10 minutes of time. You can do that with your family, you can do it by yourself. And then lastly, Miss Vicky has some really great resources. I wonder if you know about this, the Bible Memorization Challenge. In this resource, we have, a small bit of scripture for each week. Better to be poor and walk in integrity than to be crooked in one's ways, even though rich. That was for November 14th. But you can learn each day a new part of the Bible. And look, Miss Vicky even made a box that you can check mark after you commit some of that to memory. And speaking of memory, you can think about learning the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Or maybe you can memorize the Lord's Prayer this Lent. One of the great things about memorizing some of these prayers is that even when we don't have a book with us, we can just say a prayer from memory and draw more closely to God, set some of that time apart so that, again, that God's light and God's love can fill us up. And that's what Lent is all about, growing in that love. So now you know.